Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date is July 14, 2022. Early in June, there was a cyber attack on YouTube. My equipment went away, my channel went away. This is a new channel, and I'd like for you to subscribe so you can receive notification of my future uploads. So there's a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. This is episode 344. Some of the things we'll be covering. N95 mask to be required in New York City. HIMARS sold to Russia and August. So some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, Alexander Mercouris, military summary, Gonzalo Lira, Joshua Phillippe with Crossroads, Monkey and Benjamin Fulford, Israeli News Live, Paul Begley, Steve Quayle, plus. And I'd like to say welcome back to all 50 states, including Alaska, Hawaii, and the First Nations, Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi, Chickasaw, Mohawk, Apache, First Nation, Pitt River in California, Mohegans, Yakima Nation in Washington State, Potawatomi in the Midwest, Oklahoma, Ojibwe Nation in northern Minnesota, proud people who want peace and justice, Choctaw, Abenaki Tribe, Cheyenne, Massanutten, Pequot, Blackfoot in Spokane, Montana and Colville, Powhatan, Seminoles in Florida, Red Crow Tribe in Kentucky, Salt River Tribe in Arizona. And welcome back the nations of Canada, England, France, Ireland, Philippines, South Africa, Netherlands, also called Holland, Indonesia, Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, New Zealand, Maldives, Nepal, Norway, Australia, Chile, Thailand, Belgium, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Panama, Guam, a U.S. territory, Jamaica, an Icelander living in Spain and other people in Spain, Wales in the UK, Sweden, Italy, Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, Romania, Bermuda, Bahamas, British territories, Morocco, Argentina, Northern Marianas Island, Denmark, Bolivia, Uganda, Iceland, Serbia, Bulgaria, Mauritius, and the newest, Ukraine, the Czech Republic, Poland, Costa Rica, Malta, China, Hungary, Israel, and Finland. So let's get started. Okay, we understand, and I have some Patriot subscribers who are saying, what is all this news about Ukraine? But we have to, I think it's good to understand that Ukraine represents a starting point for globally taking down the deep state, bringing on Jasara, Nasara, debt cancellation, the med bed, so it's all good. So we're going to begin with some information from Mel K, who recently interviewed Benjamin Fulford. Now, Benjamin Fulford, Mel K is a journalist, operates out of New York City. Benjamin Fulford is a Canadian journalist. He worked 20 years for Forbes covering Japan, still lives in Japan, and has contacts on a global basis. And he's bringing forth this information. He's saying that out of Japan came the Unification Church. Many people have heard the term Moonies, but they went to South America, which is where the leader of World War II, Germany, was taken to Paraguay via a submarine out of Norway. So we see these contacts go back quite a ways. Now, what the Unification Church out of Japan did in South America was part of the deep state was enter into the narcotics trade. Okay. And he's bringing this out that North and South Korea want to unite. The deep state doesn't want this. Now, there was also a Kim Clement prophecy that this would happen. And also Taiwan and China want to unite, which the deep state does not want. The deep state wants conflict all over the earth for multiple reasons. One of them is to make money off of weapons. Okay, and he's bringing this out, CERN. CERN operates out of Switzerland, but there are about 6 to 7 locations globally. It's underneath the earth. This thing goes on for miles, and it's an energy system, and it can go thousands of miles per hour, and they project particles. Multiple scenarios have come out about this. The most recent is it can project an electromagnetic field around Earth to protect the Earth from asteroids. Another likely scenario, and supposedly now it's under the control of the White Hats. But in the past it was used to open portals to hell and maybe stargates off-world. So we'll have to see how that goes. But CERN is part of the deep state, had been part of the deep state system. And they did use it to open portals to down inside the earth and hell itself is inside the earth, but in a different realm. So, but the portal could go down to where Satan is. Okay. So that's Benjamin Fulford is saying this has been used in the past by the deep state for satanic rituals. Now, we see a lot of governments going down. The government collapsed in Israel. We see Sri Lanka government has collapsed. And Benjamin Fulford is bringing this out. In Switzerland, they have this area called Lake Geneva. Now, when Kirsten W. was alive, she brought out this information that this is underground, that there was something like 30,000 shadow CIA people taking refuge there. So this Benjamin Fulford has consistently said this is an area the White Hats need to take out. And he's saying that the Swiss people are rising up in this. Now, Mel K is bringing this out in New York City. And in my last video, I was talking about in New York City, they were doing a public service announcement. What to do in the case of a nuke attack. You know, get inside, and stay tuned. And there was other information about nukes, about a cloaked, a dirty bomb being somewhere in New York City and being tracked by the Pentagon. So, yeah, so now this is coming out. Mel K is saying in New York City from July 13, and the next 24 to 48 hours, a new mandate for mask inside New York City. Now, Joshua Phillippe with Crossroads is coming out with this information that in New York City, they're trying to pass a rule by the city government requiring an N95 mask. So we know an N95 mask is supposed to block like 95% of particles. And I think the cost is like $100. Now remember in 2020, when everyone was supposed to wear masks, they had no masks. So, but these are a lot more expensive, and so I'm assuming if New York City is trying to pass this rule requiring the N95 mask, that they have them ready to sell. And Joshua Phillippe is reporting that the rule would apply for individuals to wear these masks indoors and also outdoors when you are around crowds. And Joshua said, everywhere you go in New York City, you're going to be around crowds. So yeah, that's coming out. Okay, now, we have been hearing about this food shortage. And many sources like Jim Willey, Benjamin Fulford, a lot of economists, and other sources are citing a reason, Dr. William Mount, for food production going down is due to fertilizer not being available. Now, there had been a shortage of fertilizer to be shipped from Belarus and from Russia during this special military operation that's going on in Ukraine. But the deep state had a plan, because they put it in place in Sri Lanka over a year ago to restrict fertilizer being sent to the island. So then the crop production in Sri Lanka went down 50% or more. And then because Sri Lanka wouldn't pay money to the Rothschild banking system, they cut off all shipments. So this has been going on. It's been planned. So now Russia is saying that they have no problem with grain being shipped from Ukraine. But it is Ukraine who mined the Black Sea. So Russia is blaming Ukraine for the lack of shipment of Ukraine grain. Now we see in Europe, there's a big conflict, about the food shortage, in the West is blaming Russia. And Russia's saying, no, it isn't us, it's Ukraine. And we know that Ukraine then is controlled by the deep state via the shadow U.S. government, the shadow U.S. military, the shadow NATO. All right. So now we have that shipment. We recall, here's Russia. This is Ukraine. Here is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad is actually a Russian area. And we know that recently Lithuania blocked Russia from shipping through Lithuania Russian resupply to Kaliningrad via Lithuanian roads and rail. Well, now Kaliningrad, due to pressure from the European community, is backing off from that, and they're going to allow shipment by road and rail from Russia to Kaliningrad through Lithuania. And that's right. Recently there was a meeting in Istanbul to negotiate shipment of grain from Ukraine. And Russia said we had nothing to do with the shipment of Ukraine's grain. It is Ukraine who mined the Black Sea. So you need to look to Ukraine for that. And that possibly still has something to do with Ukraine's obsession with controlling Snake Island. Okay. Now, inside Ukraine, we have, here's Luhansk, Donetsk. This is the Donbass area. We have the front line. We have Crimea, Odessa, Kherson, Moldova, and this small part that Russia will take in, Transnistria. And we know that currently Russia has operating a land bridge from this area down to Crimea by both road and rail. They are currently in the process of a second land bridge going through Odessa and a third land bridge going through Transnistria. And it appears in Belarus, right in this area, Russia is amassing troops and equipment. And just recently, the Russian parliament passed the ruling that all citizens in Ukraine are eligible to become Russian citizens. So it appears that Russia plans to take over all of Ukraine. Now this is going on in the fighting. We have this along the front line, Izium, Slovenask, and Kramatorsk. Now Kramatorsk, we understand, is the headquarters for the Ukraine military. And in this area, we've got two smaller villages, Bakhmut and Severodonetsk. Okay, heavy shelling, heavy fighting is going on here. And this information is coming from A Mercouris, a journalist in London, Military Summary, a news source, and Gonzalo Lira. All right. So now, Russia is typically taking out 1,000 per day of Ukraine soldiers who are killed or wounded. And many weapons that the West supplied have been sold on the black market. Now, this is going on here. I'll draw you another map. And this correlates to some information God gave about, here we go, months ago. It's about this Donetsk River. So here we have Chernobyl, we have Kiev. This is Dnieper River. And right in this area, there's a dam. Here's Zapolnista, here's Kherson. And in Kherson, there's also an arc ship. Here's Odessa. Okay, so what's been going on is we understand the U.S. military inside Ukraine, and Dr. William Allen reported a week or so ago, it was 10,000 U.S. troops inside Ukraine, allegedly there to be advisors, but now we understand they're doing the actual launching of the HIMARS. And they have been practicing using the HIMARS and taking out some civilian warehouses, and some civilians have also been killed. Preparatory to taking out a dam in this area as Ukraine makes their offensive from this area down to Odessa. Now the HIMARS, we understand, are being launched by the U.S. military, and we understand, they've been doing practice launchings. Now what they've been doing, the strategy, according to military summary, who has Russian sources, is that the U.S. military in the Ukraine would launch a lot of different types of missiles. Then the Russian forces would take out these missiles, and then Russia would have to reload. And while they were reloading, then the U.S. would fire the HIMARS. So that strategy has been going on. Now, fighting is intense in this area. Izium, Slovenot, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, and Severodonetsk, right here. And how heavy Russia is shelling very heavily. And they have taken out in Nikolaev, also a nearby town to this area, taken out 350, they killed 350 Ukraine military soldiers. They took out 20 vehicles, including tanks. And they have impacted Ukraine's 59th, 79th, 13th, 58th, 118th, 26th plus brigades, to the point that they killed or wounded 30 to 80% of these multiple brigades, all in this area in the last week or so. Now the NATO standard is, we understand, if 5% of a brigade is killed or wounded, then you take that brigade off of the front line. They need to rest and recuperate. Well, Ukraine is not able to do that. So now they have hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers in these brigades who have to be demoralized. All right. Now, we have information about the HIMARS. That the U.S. military is operating the HIMARS inside Ukraine. Yeah. And that the U.S. had a total of 25,000 HIMARS. Now, HIMARS are a very lethal, long-range missile and new to the battlefield. And that we understand from multiple sources the U.S. has given 1/3 of its stockpile to Ukraine, or about 8,000 HIMARS. So the U.S. military is actively depleting its stockpile. Now, this comes from military summary. In the operating of the HIMARS by the U.S. military, one source was Alexander Mercouris, who received an email from an individual who was knowledgeable in the intel field relating that the U.S. military is operating the HIMARS inside Ukraine against Russia. All right. So Now, this is coming out that Ukraine west of the Dnieper River is not able to move to Donbass. And so I drew the river. And, right. And Ukraine's plan is to raise 1 million person army to have an offensive going by August. So 1 million, and they're going to take in men, males 18 to 60, and women. And then get that going by August. Okay. So now we know that the U.S. had given Ukraine something like $40 billion. That was about a month ago, and we understand most of that went to pay off Ukraine's military generals, Zelensky, and then the majority of it went to the deep state group operating out of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. All right. Now Ukraine wants the West to give Ukraine per month $9 billion. Ukraine seems to be an insatiable pit for money and weapons. Now, this is coming out just this week. The U.S. is to give 48 HIMARS to Ukraine, but we understand that's going to be the U.S. is committing up to 8,000 HIMARS, 1/3 of the U.S. stockpile. Okay, now we're hearing that the Ukraine military sold HIMARS, 1 and maybe 2 to Russia for about $800,000 plus missiles, the HIMARS missiles, for $300,000. So the HIMARS have already been sold to Russia, and in the past, Ukraine military had sold to Russia French self-propelled missiles. So some type of new missile that France had has already been sold by the Ukraine military to Russia, and now the Ukraine military has sold to Russia the U.S. HIMARS. All right. So now we have this information coming out that from Duran. And Duran is A Mercouris, and Gonzalo Lira, and Military Summary. And this UK offensive that they're trying to get going for August with a 1 million person military, the Ukraine strategy is they're willing to lose 200,000 to take out 50,000 Russians. So we see a pattern of Ukraine, Zelensky, well, he's a puppet being orchestrated by the deep state in the United States, NATO, shadow part, and not caring about the Ukraine people, because we've just heard about these horrendous losses, and yet these Ukraine military are not pulled off the front line to rest and recuperate because they don't have anyone to replace them. And the attitude is get warm bodies out there to slow Russia down. It isn't really to win. And we see this strategy is coming out and is being leaked. They want to raise 1 million people men 18 to 60 plus women in Ukraine. And they're willing to lose 200,000 to take out 50,000 Russians. So, yeah, that's going on. And Gazella Lira said that on July 11, it's been confirmed that Russia did kill 500 Ukraine soldiers. They have official numbers coming out now. Okay, and this is coming out that it's anticipated that Russia will stop the special military operation that's going on inside Ukraine for winter. And winter would comprise this period, October, November, December, January. Okay, because we recall Russia actually began this special military operation last February, which would have been right at the end of winter. Okay. And, yeah, we understand the U.S. is shipping more HIMARS to Ukraine. Now, this is coming out from Gonzalo Lira, that Iran is now selling to Russia or providing hundreds of Iranian drones that are going to be used inside Ukraine to track the HIMARS. So that's happening. And then recently we heard that in South America, that I had understood that in South America there were Chinese troops and equipment, Russian troops and equipment, and then new to me a few days ago I reported also Iran has troops and equipment there. So that's going on in Ukraine. And the big news is the requiring of N95 masks for people living in New York City. On top of that recent PSA for what do you do in the case of a nuclear event. And some people are speculating that the deep state would like to try that because they want to get that WW3 started. They make money off of weapons, but I believe that God is going to protect. All right, so now we're moving on to sci-fi. Okay. Now, Stephen Bannon, formerly with the CIA, now has a ministry, but regularly meets with the Pentagon and gets up-to-date information, says that the U.S., the alliance on Earth, has had a spaceship that for decades has traveled between Earth and Mars. Oh yeah, we were going to tell y'all about, they have bioships that do research into viruses, and I had some months ago reported that I understood that some parts of some viruses and bioweapons are created off-world because they can't coalesce, mix, and unite on Earth due to the vibration of Earth. That would be planned by God, I believe. Now, Stephen is bringing this out. This movie, Sundance, is actually it's a movie about a spaceship, and they discover this alien form of life, and it kills a lot of people. He said that's true. It's exactly true. So, and he's bringing this out that the ETs, and he said Linda Moulton Howe had reported on this some years ago, have this technology that they use crystals, similar to our concept of using a crystal ball to see into the future. And that part of the information was there would be earth changes on the earth 2020 to 2030, with the climax 2026, underwater earthquakes, volcanoes, tidal waves, and that will correlate to the UN's 2030 agenda. So that's going on. Now he's talking about, from the Bible. And the Lord said, in Judea, flee to the mountains when you're going to see signs in the sun, the moon, the waves, the sea waves roaring, men's heart failing for what they see on earth. Yeah. And Stephen is bringing this out. The primary big lie that's going to be put forward by the deep state, who come out of the ET line, the fallen angels, the hybrid, the Nephilim, and then down to the less genetic families like Rockefellers and Rothschilds, and then on down to other groups. Big lie that ETs created humans. Okay, don't fall for that. But this crystal technology, we'll see. Here's some information. Paul Begley recently interviewed Steve Quayle. Now, Steve has like 40 years of experience talking about ETs. As soon as he got out of college, he had this face-to-face meeting with Jesus, and after that, he was on this journey to let the world know about ETs. And 40 years ago, he had a kind of a tough time. All right. Now, he's been involved in a 3-year trip and excavation, and he's had professionals, archaeologists, and other professional people involved who are Christians. And they went into Mexico, the U.S. plus, and they have verified the primary thing that Steve Quayle came out of with this project God gave him was to collect all the glyphs, like hieroglyphs, petroglyphs. So they collected all of them in certain areas. They put them into a computer that was tied to AI, and then they could generate a translation, a language for the fallen angel language. And God gave me something like that, probably about, 4 or 5 months ago, about symbols and angel language. Okay, download. So now, he's tying together Egypt, the U.S., that's in the Grand Canyon, and also with the fallen angel hybrid Nephilim. Okay, now, they found in Mexico, dating before the Aztec, crystal skulls. And he's saying that movie Indiana Jones was, based on fact, actually. And then we see this information coming out from Stephen Banoon about crystal technology foretelling the future. Okay. Now, Steve Quayle is bringing this out, and a lot of people who've been researching ETs and this type thing are familiar with this. So the Smithsonian, that's a large museum in Washington, D.C. for decades, I mean, it was set up to collect all the information about the ETs, giant bones discovered. The Smithsonian would go and pick them up and put them in deep underground areas, and the public never saw them again. Oh, and they had no record of them and didn't know anything. Okay. And Steve Quayle was saying the Smithsonian underground has a secret genetics lab. And, they're set up to participate in the lie. Yeah, ETs created humans. No, that's a lie. Now, we know this is tied to Egypt, Akhenaten, when certain genetics have been passed to certain people high up in the U.S. government. Now, what they found in the Grand Canyon was a 8-foot ET, and they found a flying saucer that dated 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. This is before Jesus. So the way the timeline runs, it runs backwards. See, this 6,000 to 8,000 years ago would be a countdown to like 1,000 in this area, and then Jesus came. Then time moves forward. Now we're on 2022. All right. So, and he's talking about in Chile, they have stories about the cloud people, and they have Chile recently passed a law protecting the identity and rights of mutants and hybrids. So that's going on. And Steve is bringing this out. The Prometheus movie, E.T.'s created humans, lie. And this is new information he's bringing out pre-Adam. So that would be Adam and Eve would be down here. And we're on, at this current timeline, 6,000 years ago. So this discovery they're making is right at the beginning of our timeline. So before Adam and Eve, the fallen angels were on earth, and they built the pyramids, according to Steve Quayle. And he has been able to document 27 different ET species that have been on Earth based on the statues that they have discovered. So yeah, that's going on. And now we'll move on to heads up. What's going on? What do we need to be thinking about now? So a heads up section. All right, so this is Elena Danaan. Gave a message from Una. And she's given a message from the Intergalactic Confederation. That here's Jupiter, Earth, that, and from this, she's saying they represent the Council of 24, and they have 138 motherships, and a mothership would have adjacent smaller ships with it. So this is several thousands of ships, and they're primarily on the backside of Jupiter, although they have 4 that are orbiting Earth. And and these are in coordination and contact with the Earth Alliance and the Space Force. Earth Alliance and Space Force. So this was put in as a way to protect the Earth from some other bad groups. We want to get rid of all the bad groups we have on Earth now. All these fallen angels and the soulless hybrids. And yeah, we want that to go away. Now, this is a look ahead. We want some positive news. Okay. I have a Patriot subscriber. He's talking about the SIPs. That's an international exchange of money that's currently going on, I believe, among 160 nations. And these nations are using the SIPs system, not the SWIFT banking system, which is the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, plus. So these 160 nations are not doing export and import business with these nations. And they're no longer accepting the fiat currency, the paper currency. This group has their economic system based on gold and silver, other tangible assets. So that's going on. Now, recently I asked God, everything is swirling. It's like this and that, and then we have, in the truth community, we have the shadow CIA putting out truthers, supposed truthers, but they're putting out misinformation. Okay, so I asked God. I've done that in the past, and he gave me a Cliff High. I was surprised. I'm a fundamentalist Christian. Cliff High is a practicing yogi, but God reminded me, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So I'm asking for someone that might give some good information. And who did he give me? But this individual, who we understand receives information from President Trump's team, who said, now, Dr. William Mound had brought out that the Supreme Court has actually not been meeting for years, but this is the White Hats putting forth this under this cloak and cover. All right. That, 50 states will decertify this, the November 2020 event, and that JB will be out on President Trump in soon, August. And we know it has to be August because we had that information from 107, and that in September the states could destroy the equipment. And this is what God said to me when he gave me this individual. He said, look at his name. I said, I see it. All right. And God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. And we know from the Bible he could use, individuals and governments and that didn't follow him, but he could use them for his own purposes. Okay, a short prayer. This is a cleansing prayer modeled by Gene Decode. We remove permission to be in us, on us, around us, on earth, off world, any dimension, any person, place, or thing not of God, any assemblage of fallen angels, AI, nanobot, and other forms of tech, any non-terrestrial species, spirit, thought form, operating system, genetic overlay, past, present, and future. And we say, get away from us in the name of Jesus. Now, this prayer is based on the book of Habakkuk from the Messenger translation. I'm going to get my prayers from God. And the name of this prayer is God's Vision. God's vision is and message is a witness that points to what is coming. It will come right on time. Look at the man or woman who is full of self-importance, who has an empty soul. The person who is loyal and steady and believing in God is fully alive and really alive. Yeah, the point was this person with full of self-importance has an empty soul. Pay attention. Money deceives. The more some people have, the more they crave money. Cemeteries are full of dead nations. Who do you think you are getting rich by lying, cheating, and stealing? The people are waking up and standing up to the monsters, those without souls who are in the midst of the people. Hell opens and waits for these impostors who pretend to be good, but they are corrupt to their bones. And we ask, Father, turn our enemies to dust, vaporize our enemies and the enemies of our children. Selah. Let prosperity and dreams come true and follow as we follow in our paths of destiny. Let your goodness and mercy, O Father, flow over us and bless us and our children. And we thank you, Father, Son, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, and the Holy Spirit. And I say to my family and friends, remain steady out there, continue to pray. God is in charge and He is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.